Hello.
Hey, hi everyone. I hope
Welcome.
I hope everyone is doing fine. And sorry for a few minutes being late, but I hope it's still in time, right?
Yes, we're fashionably late, right?
Yeah.
It gives everybody a chance to gather around and warm up a little bit so that we can start in full swing. Actually, the episode today has been coming for a long time. We are super excited because we have a very special guest with us today. Just before we get started, if you're new here, this is as any, we are a podcast or a live stream. We're usually three people, but that's lovely because we get to rotate a little bit. And our friend Alba is on vacation today. So it's just Arisa and me, Josephine. And every 2 weeks we come on live. We like to discuss anything that's on our minds and maybe also on yours. And of course, anybody is welcome here because you belong in tech. That's for kind of the housekeeping. Of course, you can always ask questions in the chat. You can reach out to us if you have any suggestions for guests in the future or topics that you would like us to discuss. We're more than happy to hear from you.
Thanks for the nice intro, Josephine. I'm a bit nervous today because it's first time managing the backstage, so it really helps me.
Oh, don't worry. I will not shut up. I will just keep going so that you can organize everything because I would be very intimidated to do that. So no worries at all. No, we already made it live, so I think you are doing really well.
Yeah. And in fact, I can see Daniel is there as always.
Perfect. So then, hi, Daniel. And that means
Welcome.
we made it. We made it live. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
No, but
Cool.
I was actually mentioning our guest, and we've had her already planned for a really long time. We're super excited that she's with us today, and I think it's time for us to bring her on
the stage. So,
yes. Welcome,
Carmen.
Hi, everybody.
We're so
Hello.
excited to have you. It's such an honor.
No, thank you so much for inviting me. When Arisa reached out to invite me, I was like, wait, me? Why?
Oh, come on.
Of course.
Look, you have to fake some humility. No, I'm being silly.
I love it. Yeah. First of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining. We usually let our guests introduce themselves so they can kind of pick and choose what they'd like to highlight and are not put on the spot when they actually wanted to bury something in their CV. So would you do us the honors and introduce yourself? What do you do? How did you get into tech? The whole kabam?
Sure thing. Well, thank you so much. Hi, everybody. My name is Carmen, pronoun she, her. I'm originally from Chile, but I have been living in Austria for such a long time. Actually, in 2 weeks, it's going to be 25 years that I've been living in Austria. Yeah, I know. It's a while. But I've been in software engineering for my entire career. I've been in tech for 15 years now. I got into tech kind of by laziness because I wanted to go into theater, but my father said that if I did not do any kind of engineering, then, he'd be mad at me. So I was like, well, I do okay in computer class. I kind of went with that. I've been freelancing for most of my career. Started out as a macOS developer. Writing Objective-C. I have a rant about Objective-C. I'll save it for later. And nowadays, I'm in the area of developer relations and more specifically developer education, which in that context means that I'm helping users of our tech become successful using our products. And I work at a company called Directus. I'm a developer educator there.
But it's completely full circle, right? You wanted to go on stage and now you kind of are in your new role and you get to use all that, what would have been wasted actress talent, you can now use. That's perfect. That's a perfect fit.
I mean, the anxiety-driven adrenaline had to go somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, and all the people pleasing, I'm just projecting here, right? But I have to, if you go in.
I was not ready to be called out minutes into the podcast.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
No, you're good. You're absolutely right.
I mean, you started off saying you became a developer because you didn't want to annoy your dad. So I felt that was a given, but yeah.
Well,
No, but I think
that's
that's
true.
no, you said it. No, but it's that's so like there's already so much in there. You mentioned the freelancing. You have been doing this for a really long time, so I imagine you've seen a lot of things change over the years.
Yeah.
You've shifted a lot around, so there's so much. I don't even know where to begin asking the questions. The freelancing, like what's that like? Have you ever been employed also, or like what do you like better?
So actually, as of September, which is when I, oh no, now I'm thinking in Spanish. When I turned 15 in tech, um, you'll know what I mean.
Yeah.
I started my first ever full-time role, which was the reason I started out as a freelancer was because as a Chilean citizen studying in Austria, I wasn't allowed to get it was more difficult for me to get a work permit.
Yeah.
So because like the company hiring me would have to convince the government, blah 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 blah. So I was actually able to stay as a student if I freelanced, and because I still needed to make an income. So that's kind of how I got started.
Wow, that's really like pushing you in the deep end, isn't it? Like,
I suppose so. I mean, like it's all perspective, isn't it? Because
mhm,
I don't have the perspective of having worked at a company, which is really weird now because I'm in
mhm.
somewhere in my 30s, and and like having to navigate new things like office politics, like
Mm.
stuff like that. It's weird and different. Like I'm not complaining, mind you. It's just different.
Different. Yeah, no, I can't imagine. No, I would, in my like mental model of freelancing, it would have always been like you work a little bit like employed, and then at some point when you are an expert, you maybe become a freelancer because then I would feel most or secure enough. But that's just my silly little brain, right? And so you've done the independent thing from the start, which probably means you learned so much and you had to like adapt so much. So that's really, really cool. Like I find it super impressive.
Thank you. No, I mean like it's been a journey, and I'm really grateful for the experience because like there's a lot of like how do we talk about like adaptability in tech? Like we talk about that T model, right? That the one that
Mm-hmm.
how does it go again? Like the shallow versus like deep
Yeah.
expertise.
Mm-hmm.
And while I do feel that applies, I think even more so than that, what I loved about freelancing is not so much that it taught me to be adaptable, but versatile.
Yeah. That is a difference, right? Like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So like, it makes me less afraid, for example, to try out new tech stacks, or like if a
Mm-hmm.
client comes up to me and says, "Hey, I've got this 3-year-old app, React Native app that no one's touched. Do you want to try and fix it?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I'll try TypeScript. Why not?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't regret the choice,
No,
but
that's amazing.
but yeah, it's that adaptability that I find really fun. It also allows me like the flexibility to try out new tech stacks and like
Mm-hmm.
experiment and like also consult and learn about what tech looks like across different types of tech companies. Like I've worked in fintech, med tech, um, k- 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 food. What's it called? Like
Like
Oh,
the gastro industry.
gastronomy,
I'm
gastronomy,
not sure.
yeah,
Gastronomy.
yeah.
Yeah.
gastronomy. Yeah.
Mhm.
I see. Oh, so I don't know how this works. I see questions in the chat. Can I?
Yeah,
We
sure,
can
sure,
we can
sure.
go there now. Yeah. So Chris is asking. Oh wait, this is Gabrielle first. How did Carmen
Oh,
find
sorry.
getting started as a freelancer? So were you able to find jobs rather quickly? Oh, I'm doing a bad job at reading.
You're doing great.
No, but was it easy to get started? Did you do it on the side of being a student with kind of the security, I guess, that you had already your little your life as a student, and then you could work at the same time, or how did you do that?
Well, I want to be extremely upfront because transparency is important here. I got started in freelancing because I wanted to get some work. And like, if you don't mind me going on a little story, what
Go.
happened? Oh, thank you. Like my girlfriend at the time and I wanted to find an apartment. And I was like looking at want ads for like babysitting jobs and stuff. I was like 21 at the time. I did a couple years of uni, but I'm not a great student. I'm an okay teacher, not a great student. And my girlfriend was like, "Hey, you just bought a MacBook. Why not apply for that like Mac OS developer role?" And what happened was, I wrote to this person. I said like, "Hey, I'm interested in working on this," and this person was like, "Great, let's meet at Cafe Mozart, because yes, I live in Vienna. We go to Cafe Mozart,
Of course, yeah.
of course.
Fancy, yeah.
It's so expensive. Anyway, oh yeah. So we went there, and I met this guy. His name Philip, lovely guy. He goes like, "I'm going to be honest with you. Your CV is practically empty. Why did you apply for this role?" And I was like, "Look, Philip, I think I can learn quickly. I'm super motivated, and I was very, very lucky that we went to the same high school." And he took a shine to me, and I said like, "You seem cool. You seem chill. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to recommend you a book on programming for Mac OS. And I'm going to ask you to please do some support emails for me for my apps for a couple months." And that's kind of how I got started freelancing for Philip. And it's just sort of cascaded from there. He did a lot of mentoring for me.
Oh,
And
that's amazing.
I was very lucky. I was
Yeah.
very, very lucky. But, I guess there's something to be said for putting yourself out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that first step, right? Like
Yeah.
you can either question yourself, do I have enough skills? Am I good enough? And that's very normal and very, very human thing to do. Especially when you're young and you don't have a lot of experience,
Yeah.
but it's so brave to go and be like, I want to learn. Like that's really, and I think we can all, in German, we say cut a slice off from that, but like, yeah, that sounds really horrible. I don't know how to translate learn from that. I think would be the appropriate way to learn.
Schnitte schneiden? No.
Ja, eine Scheibe abschneiden. Yeah.
Sorry, that's my
Oh God,
Austrian.
I'm learning so hard.
Welcome to the German language course. No, so I think that's really like a good, that's something we can all take to heart, right? And be like, okay, maybe I don't have all the skills, but I can show my intention of growing them, and so I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah, I got very lucky, I have to say, and I mean, I think, when it comes to things like this, for me, what's really important is not so much to sort of like pay it back, but to pay it forward.
Mm-hmm.
So like, leveraging the privileges that I have now to folks who are starting out, because 15 years ago was a different time.
Yeah. I guess like that's really a huge difference compared to now.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, that would have been my next question, because I feel like, of course, it's amazing to learn about how folks got started, but
Yeah.
then like sometimes when people ask me, like I did a boot camp over 5 years ago, and then I got a job relatively quickly by a happy accident, right? But now when folks ask me now, is it worth it? Should I do it? I'm like, I honestly can't speak very much to it, because the market has changed so much that I would be afraid to tell people to just go for it if they like. Yeah, it depends, of course, on the situation, but yes, it's
No,
changed.
totally, and it's intimidating. It's intimidating, especially because you want to be ethical in terms of like how we introduce folks to tech, and like especially in the last year or so, like not to go off on a side tangent that's a little bit of a negativity, but like, let's be honest, we've spent a lot of time, especially since the beginning of the pandemic, telling folks, hey, tech is great. You're gonna be super rich. You're gonna work in your pajamas. It's gonna be great. And then like, 2023 happened.
Mm-hmm.
And like, what do we tell them now? And I'm not
Yeah.
saying don't get into tech. There's still like good money to be made in tech, but like we need to like be more cognizant of the privilege that we had when we got started, especially when I got started, but also leverage what we can in order to do that. Because I can tell y'all what happened after I started freelancing and like how I started working with companies, to sort of like segueing into what Chris was asking earlier, about like whether I'm freelancing for companies or taking on projects from individual clients. The answer to that is both. And sort of like going with what came my way. And I did that because like a couple years into freelancing, like, believe it or not, based on the last 20 minutes, I'm a shy person. That doesn't mean I don't enjoy being around people. And I mean, I don't even know where I fall in like the introvert extrovert thing. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Point is, like, after a while of freelancing, I found myself, because I was just working with one person, I found myself feeling really lonely, right? Or isolated. I wasn't working in a team. So I thought, hey, you know what? I'll check out this whole meetup scene. and I'm very lucky that there is a meetup scene in Austria and in Vienna. So I went to the macOS developers meetup. Now, mind you, this was 15-ish years ago. A lot of like, and I don't want to generalize, and I'm not gonna like be negative or anything, but I was intimidated by a lot of like big dudes with Linux beards.
I love the Linux beard. Yeah.
Nothing against Linux beards, folks. If you have a Linux beard, I'm sure it's wonderful. But you know what I mean? Like, it's a little intimidating. Also, my German was not nearly as good as it was back then. And so like I was so intimidated. I just like went back to my hobbit hole and cried. So I was just like, okay. And then I gave it another try. I went to the Ruby meetup because I was doing a little bit of Ruby in order to compile the macOS apps. And like I started very slowly getting into the meetup scene, and I started seeing the value of it. Like, I'm very lucky that it was run by some really cool people who started introducing me to things like Rails Girls, which, if you're not familiar, are initiatives to help underrepresented folks get into tech. And through that, I started coaching there, and I started like, going to the meetups. I ended up helping run the Ruby meetup. And sort of like cascading from there, I started finding clients by being involved in these sort of community spaces.
Oh, but that's amazing. That's like literally like a coding for fairy tale almost, right? It sounds like really, of course, it's more complex than that if you're in it. And but it sounds like it should be, right? Like that's what I would hope for anybody, to find this way of, okay, I interact with the community, I give back, and then kind of organically that also brings things back to me that I wasn't even like hoping for or pining for, kind of. And that's such an amazing story.
Thank you. You're very kind. I mean, like, it's difficult to consolidate the feelings on this because I would like to think that in theory it is possible to make a career out of networking. And like, I mean, especially in terms of like how we approach networking in the year 2025, where a lot of it, we spent how long on Twitter Spaces?
Countless time.
The guilty laugh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's different. It hits different.
Yeah. No, that's true. And it's shifting around so fast. And I think like in DevRel or Dev Education, we've also have a different approach to the whole community things. And it's also, they have also been changing. It was at some point in between really commercialized, which wasn't that great either. Now it's kind of come, in my feeling, in this very short time span that I've been involved, but it's kind of coming a little bit back to the roots and becoming more offline, smaller, more welcoming, more inclusive, at least in my bubble. And then, like you said, there are these spaces that are still full of very intimidating, very smart guys with the Linux beards. No offense, but like, and it's shifting. And there are these amazing initiatives, like you just mentioned, the Ruby community, for example. Are you like very active there still, or was that just trying to segue into?
I actually emceed the European Ruby conference last year.
Wow!
Whoa! Okay. Wow!
Cool. Good fun. It was good fun.
Where was it?
That was in Sarajevo in Bosnia. It's quite fun.
Wow, so cool. Yeah. And how many people showed up? How big was it?
Oh, I want to say like 500 to 600 folks. Yeah.
That's a big group.
That's intimidating. Yeah.
Oh, it's good fun. I don't know. I love emceeing. I get to be a little bit bossy, but in a playful way. Just sort of like, settle down, people.
Yeah.
No, I know that. Yeah.
Good MC makes the whole difference, the whole vibe, right?
Well, I have opinions on emceeing because, like, I think, like, I'm sorry, I'm segueing us, like,
go for it.
I think the best kind of MC is the type that you forget.
Really?
Yeah, because they're the glue. They're the glue that holds the talks together. So it's not so much about you as a stage presence, but rather how well you make things run. Which can also inject some personality, but there's like also all of this concept of like, I don't know, telling jokes or whatever, or like, telling people to make some noise, and it's like it's memorable, but not in a way that one might desire. So like, I don't know, I feel like it's important to just sort of like be there to make others shine.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. No, I think I guess like what you remember or how you remember it, or like what aspects of a conference or you remember for sure. I just found that, for example, I attended SweldConf in Stockholm a
Ooh,
couple of
cool.
years ago. And it was the first time that I was at a conference where the people actively encouraged people to let people in their group. I think it's very common at a certain
Oh,
kind of like conference nowadays, but for me it was the first time. I was super scared of going there. It was a really new community to me, and then there was somebody saying, like the MC was saying, like, no, like do the whole Pac-Man thing where
Pac-Man
you
rule.
open,
Yeah,
where you
Pac-Man
open
rule.
up, where you open up your group and let folks in, and they were really lowering the threshold and setting the tone for the whole event. And I'm never going to forget that, even though I don't know anything else that they said, right? It was that, but they did an amazing job of like making people shine and creating an atmosphere and like pulling it all together. So I think it's like an MC has a lot of power. And
I agree.
it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and you need to also, I would say, like learn a lot about, like, for example, the speakers who you need to introduce to, and also the organizers who plan on, let's say, like, I don't know, bring on up on a stage for in between, you know, like each talks, or, you know, like planning the schedules, which sometimes could be delayed, right? So you need to have a lot of like like skills. So I cannot do that because I'm already terrified by managing the backstage right now. That's why
Oh, but you're
maybe
doing
I'm a bit
great,
silent
Arisa.
today.
No,
Look how smoothly this is running.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing so well. Don't worry. Don't worry. No, but that's the problem. You're like the MC. Nobody can tell like how nervous you may be, but it's happening in the background, and nobody will ever know. But I'm going to show my hands. Like my hands are not doing any organizing in the background. So no, but
No,
go ahead.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. I wasn't really saying anything. I was trying to maybe get back to Ruby or to community work or to, but I have nowhere to go. So,
Can I say one tiny thing about emceeing that's like probably my favorite lesson I've ever learned?
Yeah, go for it.
One thing I love to do as an MC is to be, and I'm going to be polite about this, extremely annoying about insisting that I get the pronunciation of names right. And I want to ask all of us, how many times have we been there, including audience, that we go like, oh no, it's not Carmen, it's Carmen, or you can just say Carmen, or you can just say Carmen, or you can say Carmen, you know, like it's fine, just go with that. And then like I was doing that because I was going up to people and it's like, okay, so it's Anthony. And it's like, no, you can just say Anthony. And I was like, no, because I don't want you to just say Carmen, like, you know, and like, I don't know. Once I was insisting that people call me Carmen, and somebody goes like, no, you know why? Because if you're gonna go around making sure that you pronounce people's names right, you need to set an example by demanding that people pronounce your name correctly. And I was like, dang, you're right.
And so, how do you properly pronounce your name?
Oh, like you did it already. It's Carmen. So you
Carmen, yeah, okay, yeah, kind of the German attempt at a proper R, right? Like,
oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
but so it shows also that you value, right, like other people, and I think, I mean, of course, we're all trying. Most of us are not native speakers, and I think I would never like be mad about it.
Of course.
But I think it's one small, or it's not a small thing, but one thing we can do to make sure that people feel like seen and represented, maybe. And so I think that's really valuable.
Yeah, I think in terms of like inclusivity, this is really important towards making, because like by feeling included, speakers, are more successful. They feel more comfortable,
Yeah, no,
Right.
it makes a lot of difference. And so you have been speaking a lot, or is that more?
Define the time frame. In the last 6 months, yeah, a little bit too much. But it ebbs and flows. But I've been speaking at conferences and events for 10 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've also been organizing a couple events, a lot of them around Ruby, JavaScript, or helping out events around the world. Yeah, it's good fun. I don't know. I think for me, something that I took away from my experience in like with not just with my first client, but also with like meetups and like getting into communities that gave me so many opportunities is I want to keep this going because I feel it's vital. And you might think like, okay, but like at what point do I stop, or at what point do I like, does this ever pay off? Let me tell y'all, like teaching someone to code and then like 3 years seeing them work at GitHub is so amazing. You
No,
know?
that's crazy.
Yeah,
That's really, really cool.
It is absolutely wild.
And
Yeah.
I think most of the, sorry, Arisa, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just saying, yeah, then was gonna connect to like some similar experience I had, because I also used to mentor students, and then
Cool.
several of them, like got the job. They were like doing completely different job, not related to tech at all. Some of them were, doing a musician activities and then working in different, kind of industry work, and then started to become a developer. So this really like paid me off, and not just like paid me off, but it's amazing feeling, because that's the passion about, or let's say like the source of the energy that I was teaching the others and educating the others. So I also believe in the education. So yeah, I just wanted to share with you, like, this feeling is really nice.
Yeah. And I think sometimes a lot of it is also invisible, right? Like maybe you don't know from everybody, maybe it's just a tiny percentage, but just knowing that maybe for one person you made an impact, maybe for just one person, it was so amazing to see somebody who looks like them on stage, or like, I don't know, representation matters so much. And if your topic explains something, or like every time I hear people talk about imposter syndrome in the beginning of my journey in tech, that was such a, like, it was so mind-blowing to me, because I thought, I didn't even know that this had a name. I just thought, well, I was inferior, and that was my feeling with it, right? And so like, and then you hear people talk about it on stage, and you're like, oh, it has a name, and there's things we can do about it, and actually we're not alone. Like, and I think that relates to so many things. So I think we have to remind ourselves that somebody will have heard it, and
Totally.
Yeah, and also finding, let's say, the others who also share the same feeling, because otherwise, just by knowing the term of the syndrome itself, maybe you feel you're the only one having, but then learning that the others also like share the same feeling or similar experience, then this definitely would help, and you feel like you have allies with you.
Yeah. It's a whole process of going through it, right? Like I remember in the beginning, I would watch these talks by these amazing women, and they were saying they had imposter syndrome, and I was like, no, how is that possible?
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it was such cool.
Yeah.
Carmen, you look like you want to say something.
Oh, have you all read this article from 2021 called "Stop Telling Women They Have Imposter Syndrome"?
Yeah. We should share it in the chat if you wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
I hope it posted. It's so good, because like it doesn't mean that we don't have imposter syndrome. It's just that like sometimes, especially those with like those in positions of power, are telling us, oh, you're not like stagnating, and I'm not like preventing you from moving forward in your career. You just have imposter syndrome. And so like knowing where to stop that buck is so tricky, because we all have feelings of imposter syndrome. Let me, like, the most recent one for me was I did my first ever international keynote speech at DevOps Days Halifax in Canada.
Oh, wow.
Super fun. I was the only woman speaker there, which was a first and didn't feel great. But like it took place at Dalhousie University, a university in Halifax. And like I had a couple of the students, of women students come up to me afterwards and be like, hey, Carmen, your talk was really good. Thank you. And also like, thank you so much for like showing us that women can be on stage. Like you're really a role model for us. And I'm like, me? Like, a dummy like me? Like it's difficult to measure the impact that has. Yeah.
No, it gives me goosebumps just thinking about it. I had a similar situation at a Dev Fest where also, I don't know if the other female speakers canceled, or there was just literally just me, and it wasn't a university, and there were a lot of like really young, like high school students, like really young folks were around. And some of them came up to me later, and they were all so kind, and they were so like, we want to, like, we've seen you and we want to get into tech. Like my talk wasn't even that techy, but it's just the fact that you see somebody on stage and you're like, oh, I could do this. Like, I hope they also think like I could do this better, like I really, like, that showed me that I don't want to, like, of course, we all have to manage our energy and figure out like, if you feel like it's too much, of course, don't keep going just because you know. But I feel like if as long as I can, I want to do it at least sometimes to feel like this is really important, and we should like support each other to kind of get that across. But you mentioned earlier, like it got a lot. And I think that's also really important to kind of like balance it out between, yes, it's super important, but in the end, your mental health and your well-being for yourself is also extremely important. And yeah.
I agree 100%. And like, not to speak as a people pleaser, but no, there was no resentment there. I'm just being silly. No, but there is an element of people pleasingness to this. If not for yourself, think of the fact that you're only as effective as you are capable. How tempting is it to take so many like mentees on and be like, I'm going to say, get everyone a great career and blah, 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 blah. And then you're like not able to do it because, you know, speaking of freelancing, one of the hardest parts of freelancing is managing your time. And this is something I struggled with tremendously because sure, especially when I was billing hourly, like every hour I got paid.
Oh yeah.
Look, Saturday, I'm sitting on the sofa. I could be watching Netflix or could be making some money.
Oh, that would get me so badly. Yeah.
Add on top of that all of the extra activities like event organizing or like, you know, things. I was part of the main organizing team of the European Ruby conference in Vienna in 2018. And I will never forget, right when that was done, my body went like, cool, surprise, you're burnt out now. Couldn't work for like 6 months properly.
It's real.
It's real. And it's like, like you start recognizing the signs and you think to yourself, I mean, like, mind you, I was somewhere in my 20s at the time. And it's easy to think like, oh no, I'll just rest on the weekend or I'll just drink lots of coffee. And your body's like, no, you won't.
I think it's a learning journey for like some people are naturally really good at listening to their bodies and at doing this at the right kind of or at the right pace for them. I've had similar experiences where even if you feel like, oh, but I'm not even doing this much, or like, I don't know, you're trying to justify it to yourself. At some point, like you get to a point where you physically can't anymore, and that's very scary. And I think for me, it's been a roller coaster. So I think it's really important to also talk about, and especially like in the DevRel community. I think this is something that we should talk about more because there are a lot of folks who try to do a lot of things at the same time, and it's not always healthy.
How can you blame it? How can you
blame
it?
No, I'm not. Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm not saying you are. Like, sorry.
No, I know. No, I know. But it's, like how?
Yeah, I think it's really like connected topics, I would say, like coming from the imposter syndrome and then being aware of, let's say, like the time you can spend for either taking a proper rest or pushing a little bit harder to go beyond, and also engaging with the communities. I see, like quite like some kind of a pitfall that people easily could fall in if you're working as a DevRel or doing a DevRel in your spare time, because you feel that you have a lot of energies, people's expectations are high, and there are things you want to achieve. But sometimes people, like could be a little bit blind about their capability at the time. So having like the higher aims and the goals are good, but probably like we should have the good eyes, not just by ourselves, but also from the others, like friends around you, or could be family, could be your friends, like can tell you like, isn't it a little bit too much what you're doing? Maybe like you should spend your little bit time taking a walk outside rather than, stacking up yourself on the couch for all day long for looking at the laptop. So yeah, it's really hard. But yeah, you're right. Like you were saying, some people are good at it, like by naturally, like controlling, like when they feel stressed or when they notice like, oh, okay, I reached the limit, then they're good at for taking a rest. But some people are not, and I personally don't know what I am, but yeah. But I think it's one of the difficult things for quite a lot of people. Yeah, and it's really like related topics for communities. Yeah.
Especially when you see the need to, like, quote unquote, help people, for example, right? Like maybe you believe in something, you want to advocate for it, you want to help the other people. And then it just kind of comes to a place where it's really difficult to manage, and probably the effort is not really transparent. And then if there's a company behind it pushing, and maybe you have targets, that's really, really challenging. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I have one question. Oh,
please.
sorry. Go ahead, Carmen.
No, I don't want to interrupt the flow. Go ahead.
Okay, I just wanted to bring up the question from Gabriel because he asked before we go for like another topic. I really didn't want to forget. So, any tips for going to the tech meetups? Like when you feel quite nervous, or maybe first time, or don't know anyone there. So, which kind of tips do you have?
Yeah, because I would get quite nervous. Like nowadays, I feel a lot more calm because I've gotten used to it. But I can tell you like what worked for me, and I got very lucky. For example, at the Ruby meetup, I knew one of the organizers. I went to school with her little sister.
Perfect. Yeah.
Which was extremely lucky. Or like when I went to my first conference, my sister, who at the time was studying molecular biology, came with me to, actually speaking of DevFest, came with me to DevFest Vienna.
Nice.
In long time ago. And she ended up going into tech. I mean, which is pretty cool. But also, she's a lot more like outgoing than I am in that sense. So like, coming along with her kind of helped me. And then like over time, I've started doing kind of the opposite of that, which is like, if I'm speaking at an event or if I'm organizing an event, I now go up to the people who kind of look like they're by themselves and very politely try and be like, very politely try to like, hey, can I hang out with you? You waiting for somebody? And sort of like, just get to know them that way.
No, I think that's a really good point. For myself, I always talk myself out of going because then I'm too scared to go by myself. And I usually set myself like a time minimum. I say, okay, I will just I'll just go for 1 hour.
Ooh, I like that.
Because it takes the pressure off. I never try to pressure myself in having to stay the entire evening, or I don't even have to talk to anybody. I can also just be by myself. But if it happens, great. And if there's talks on a meetup, for example, you can talk to people about the content of the talk. Did they like it? Did they work with the framework? Like, are there any kind of shared interests or anything that you can that's kind of neutral ground, right? Because some people maybe don't like talking about themselves with strangers, which is perfectly fine.
Absolutely.
Or maybe they're cute stickers or something that you can like point out to people, right? It's like, so there is like a shared ground, and I always find that kind of helps. But yeah, for me, it was the expectation management. Like, I can go if I want to. I don't have to talk if I don't want to. Like, that really helps me.
Yeah. Or the other tips would be like maybe a little bit new perspective, but sign up yourself as a speaker for lightning talk, because not just, like the conferences that you have the opportunity to talk, and not just the DevRel folks or the speakers. There are lots of, like non-DevRel folks speaking. And for Meetup, I would say like those places are really perfect because it's not going to be like 500 or 1,000, 2,000 audience, like joining at the same time. You're going to have a little bit more calm, a little bit smaller scale, more friendly, like atmosphere. I don't say the other conferences are not friendly, but I would say like a little bit more, like friends who know, like a little bit more close to. So you can definitely, like start, from there, because by speaking, then some people might be interested in, about the topics that you talk to. So it's quite like natural, let's say, like environment that you can create by yourself, that people would come to you, based on what you talked. And people would also see you before you're going to give a talk, because there usually would be any information about your talk. So generally you can actually like expand the connections, like by doing a lot of extra hard work to think about, prepare yourself, like, okay, if I talk right now as a stranger, it feels a little bit, like awkward. What do I do? But instead you can just like introduce yourself to, like, in a very generic situation that you're going to give interesting topics for audiences, and then audience will come to you if they're interested in. So that's also another tips I wanted to just quickly share.
I love that. I love that. You know, what's the thing I love about, like, going out of your comfort zone in that respect? Because, like, I don't know about the rest of y'all, but like going to a meetup and giving a talk is kind of scary the first
It
time.
is. It is. Yeah.
And the thing I love about doing it is that you then realize that, especially or at events or at other conferences, is that first of all, like, you're not the only one who's scared. Have you all heard of something called Global Diversity CFP Day?
No.
Just no, it's first time. Tell me, tell us more.
Oh, I get to introduce y'all to GDCFP Day. Okay, so Global Diversity CFP Day is an event, and I think it's coming back hopefully soon, to help promote peoples from underrepresented or marginalized groups get into tech speaking, or public speaking in general. So it was a workshop that would take place every year. Blah blah blah. It was really good. CFP in this case, in case you're curious, stands for Call for Proposals or Call for Papers, when conferences invite folks to apply. And so, like, it was a workshop to, like, help folks get into, like, writing proposals, coming up with topics, writing their bios. How much do we hate writing our bios? But so I gave a presentation at one a couple of years ago about getting nervous when public speaking. Because we all get nervous. Oh, thank you so much, Arisa. That's the one.
No worries. I hope that's the one. Yeah.
That is indeed the one. And I went on Twitter at the time, and I just did some empirical investigation and found out from, like, people like, hey, do you get nervous? How long, like, relative to your talk, do you get nervous? And what do you do to mitigate it? What does it feel like to be on stage? All of this stuff. And what you discover is that people, first of all, people, even people who have been speaking for 14 years, still get nervous when they get on stage. I get super nervous when I go on stage. I become, like, it's kind of like exponential. Like, the closer to my talk, the more difficult to be around I become, because I'm just, like, pacing or just being like, does my hair look okay? Like, I don't know, the AV people asked me to take off my hoop earrings, and I was like, no, you cannot.
I hate that. I really hate that when.
Oh, but the sound it makes is also very distracting, so you have to really, like, balance that.
Which is why I prefer a hand microphone. But, like, all of this stuff, and like but I think my favorite one, like, so I shared a lot of posts from people who gave, like, experiences on that, and I think my favorite thing that somebody said was, I get nervous, and the day I stop being nervous, I will stop speaking, because nervousness can also be an interpretation of excitement. Because you care about what you're delivering. You care. You want to do a good job. And let me tell, right? And so, like, that kind of changed the game for me. And there's, like, a whole bunch of tips that people have. Like, one that I like to do that I got from my friend Jess is to, on the day of the day before the talk, or, like, early morning on the day of your talk, just go look at the empty stage. Just go look at it.
But that can also be more scary, no?
I mean, your mileage may vary, of course.
Yeah.
I find it helpful is, like, this is where I'm going to be. This is where the scary thing is going to happen. Like, start talking to I like talking to the AV people before, like, audio video, because I just, like, I need to have a rapport with them, just to be like, when I have to tell them that they're not allowed to take off my earrings, like, at least we're friends by that time,
Yeah. That makes sense. And I feel like that's a really undervalued position at a conference, right? Like, many folks, and so, like, if you go up there and you say, like, hey, how are you doing? Are you having an okay day? Is it stressful? Like, they will appreciate it, and of course they'll do a good job either way, but it's a nice gesture as well. So I really like that. No, that's true. And it's like, you always want to do, like, regardless of whether it's your job or you've done the talk multiple times or something. Of course, I don't hope I will ever be as scared as for my first talk, because that was really, like, too scared. That was really, like, really close to, like, not being okay anymore, scared. But still, like, I always want to do well, right? And so it matters. And if it stops mattering, then you can still do it as your job if you have to, but that'll also probably be something that will burn you out in the long run if you stop doing it, even though you hate it. And so I think it's a really good signal that your body sends you of like, hey, is this like tingly, happy, nervous, or is this like, oh no, like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There was another question in the chat about Summer of Code, because I realized that we have it in the description also, and we teased at it. Because, can you talk a little bit more about Summer of Code? What is it?
I'd love to. This is one of my favorite topics in the world, and that's when Arisa was asking me like, "Oh, what would you like to talk about?" I was like, "Can I talk about Summer of Code?" I'm going to start with a disclaimer to say that unfortunately, this program no longer exists. However, it is quite possibly one of my favorite experiences ever in tech, and I believe its spirit can live on through those of us that believe in something like this. So yes, as Arisa correctly linked, we're talking about the Rails Girls Summer of Code. You might have heard of Rails Girls. If not, you heard it from me like half an hour ago, which is like a series of workshops to help underrepresented folks get into tech. And what Rails Girls Summer of Code was a program that might sound similar if you're familiar with Google Summer of Code, which is a summer internship to work on open source projects. Super cool. And it was, and you get paid to do it. But what Rails Girls Summer of Code was a crowdfunded version of this. So like, we get money from sponsors and folks around the world, and we would like run this program for folks around the world. And we've had folks being there and they could work on, and it's not just Rails, mind you, they worked on Rails, they worked on Django, they worked on, Servo, the Rust-based browser engine. Yeah, no, people are doing cool stuff. And so what they would do is we'd have folks from around the world apply to this program, and we would help, organize it, provide folks to mentors so that they can help them with the program. And by the end of it, they, get paid for 3 months of the summer and like get started. And this is, let me tell you, I met people from all corners of the planet. I met people from Nairobi. I met people from Delhi. I met people from South Korea. I met people from Medellin in Colombia, and like New Zealand, and like, using that as a segue into your first job has been such a magical thing, because like what I loved about Summer of Code is that it was like a leg up into a community, a leg up into an open source project, like real life developer experience, but you were also getting paid for it.
No, that's amazing.
Because like what we were talking about earlier in terms of like, developer relations and like, staying up to date and fear of missing out or FOMO. And we look at these people who are like churning out 5 videos a day on like why React is bad or why React is good. I don't know.
Reasonable topic.
Is Tailwind good or bad? What developers talk about all day.
And every day.
What we don't take into account is that these are folks who can afford to do it, who have because when we think of like accessibility, we're thinking about like web accessibility, like, so folks can like for folks with vision impairments can like access your content, and or mobility issues can like, interact with your website. But it's not just that, is it? It's also financial accessibility. It's time accessibility. Because like I'm going to go on an assumption and say that a lot of the folks who create 5 videos a day arguing about Tailwind don't have children, don't have families, don't, get paid a ton of money by big AI company, insert a big AI company here, to be able to produce that content. So being able to provide that in a going back to Summer of Code, in a crowdfunded way to folks who otherwise wouldn't have those opportunities, was something that I found so meaningful.
That's amazing. And I think other industries, of course, or disciplines have similar problems where lots of internships are unpaid. It's really difficult. People are expected to have a lot of work experience, but nobody's giving them the chance to actually work. I think that is such a big deal. And you have to do student internships and then they're not paid. And like other industries have this also, and a lot more than tech. And tech, I feel like we're still super privileged. But of course, like what you're saying is true. Like who's getting the opportunities? And like, so it's amazing that a project like this existed. And I'm sure everybody who also benefited from it will take that spirit and bring it into other like community projects, right? And so I think the fruits cannot even be counted that kind of have been shared there. Yeah, that's amazing. And so, but sorry.
No, go ahead.
But as you mentioned, it doesn't exist anymore. Is there anything to kind of follow up or any?
Yeah, so there's a couple of programs that are running nowadays. There's stuff like Outreachy. There's stuff like what's it called? Rustbridge, Railsbridge that still exists, which I'm extremely grateful for. But like, it's the impact I miss. It's the worldwide impact. You know, it's like, you know, how we spent like the early years of the pandemic telling everyone, hey, get into open source and you'll get a job automatically, you know? And like, we all kept forgetting the asterisk of like, yeah, if you live in a Western rich country, you know, where Microsoft can be bothered to hire you, you know?
Yeah.
Some companies, they also like offer a little bit of paid internship, or even like a semi-college system, I would describe like that you actually go there for a little bit longer term. And in the end, you started to get paid. And if there isn't potential that company sees from you or in you, then you could actually like continue. So they are really like hard to find, but it's not like not impossible to find it. But you're right, it's really like less numbers of it. So you need to be really like good at searching it, finding out in the right moment. Because there were some of, let's say, the opportunities that I wanted to start, you know, like, to brush up a little bit my technical skills, so-called. So, but then, you know, I'm a little bit like qualified for that. So these kind of stuff, you get kicked out because timing was not right. Things, if those things existed a few years in the back, then maybe like I had a little bit of more chance, or some people would feel it like it. So I'm feeling like no, I'm feeling like more opportunities for like people to find out their potentials would be something a little bit like missing. It could be more. It could be more. It's not like completely missing.
Yeah, and especially with the rise of AI and Copilot and all of these AI tools, it feels to me like companies are trying to replace junior developers with AI and then only hire senior. And you're like, but do you know how a senior developer is made? He or she or they have kind of to be like a junior first. And so like, where are the new ones coming from? Like, it's just there's a gap in the system. But if there's a lot less opportunities for more junior folks. I think
like, what is it? Supply and demand has skewed. I am not going to sit here and say like, oh, it's going to balance out in the future. I'm just going to say I've been there. You know, not on the same scale, but I remember, you know, there's always these waves. You know, like. Was it 2017? Vienna was the capital city of the world of chatbots, and everybody was going to make a chatbot startup, and everyone was a natural language processing expert and data scientist and stuff. And then that went away, and then same happened with cryptocurrencies and like all of that. And like, look, I'm not going to sit here and say like AI is going away in 5 minutes. I don't know. I'm just saying stay versatile.
Yeah.
And like, I don't know, especially with like starting out in tech nowadays, I find it so difficult because we've all been there, right? Like, you know, we kind of, especially those of us who've been around for a while, like there's this tendency to be like, oh, I'm not in it for the money. I'm here to like, you know, for the joy of the craftsmanship. I'm here to write good, clean code. And like, sure, that's nice, but I still need to make a living, you know?
Yeah.
Using making money as a motivator to like get into tech is extremely valid.
Yeah.
And like, why not take the optimal path?
No, of course, especially
path.
Yeah, and especially in this economy, right? Like nobody can afford to do things for fun anymore. Like,
Yeah.
no, absolutely. We're almost at an hour already, and we have still so many things on our list. I don't even know what to do. So we have to slowly start wrapping things up and just bring you back another time, because I feel like there's so many
I'd
things
love to.
we haven't shared our crafts, we haven't crocheted together. There's lots to still do. There's one more question from Gabriel on the chat, if you're open to
Sure.
talking about it. He's asking about how to come back after burnout. Like you mentioned earlier, it took you like almost 6 months. And if you're comfortable to speak about that, is there anything you can say to that?
Absolutely. I want to start by saying I'm not a doctor. And I, don't take what I did as the correct way to do it, because I don't know what the correct way to do it is. I took the break, and getting back into work was difficult, but I slowly ramped it up again. I adopted work hours, even though I was a freelancer, like 9 to 5, and then at 5, I'm done. No more, no phone in my bedroom. Like, I'm not looking at social media after 5 p.m. or whatever, which is hard to do. Especially when you see all these people doing all the cool stuff and like making their side project number 500, and you're just like barely managing to scrape by like your pull request, what is it? Self-compassion. Was it tricky to start finding jobs again? I had a lot of clients that took me back in, but again, that was my luck. I still had the meetups. I still could go and tell people like, hey, I'm looking for client work. Like I used to go to the freelancer meetup in Vienna quite often. So, but again, that's the other, that's the other caveat, isn't it? I live in a city where there are meetups. Not every city has that.
No,
And I'm sorry, I don't want to be a bummer, but
Yeah, my place doesn't have.
really,
I mean, like I chose to live here, so just
Yeah.
need to travel 30 minutes by train. But yeah, you're right. Not every city has meetup close by. Yeah.
And I think the point of the meetup is also a little bit connection, right? And of course, it
Absolutely.
is amazing to talk to folks who do something similar and who can relate. But connection can look different for different people, and it could be also online. It could be in Slack. It doesn't have to be even like at the same time. It can be asynchronous. You can have amazing exchanges with folks also via LinkedIn or Twitter or like whatever platform you're on. Or it can be somebody who's completely like unrelated for that. And if you feel like you're experiencing burnout, or if you're just not feeling good and it doesn't have a name, get help, right? We're not doctors like Carmen, like you mentioned, but generally I think that's an okay advice to seek help when you feel like you need it, or even before, because we can all use a little bit of help.
Yeah.
I like that.
Cool.
It was such a pleasure to have you
Same.
on. I feel like we could literally go for hours. I didn't even once think of my crochet project, so that's a good sign. No, but it was so amazing to have you with us, and we would love to have you back at some time. We really appreciate your openness, sharing your many experiences, and we want to say big thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I had a wonderful time.
You.
Oh, that's amazing.
We also did.
We will be back with a new episode in 2 weeks. We'll share it in the meetup so folks can RSVP or just check out our YouTube, and we'll be around. Thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you for all your questions, your curiosity, and see you around next time.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you
See
all.
you,
Take
everyone.
care.